The runoffs are over and it's time to look ahead. Who made it to the November ballot? Good evening, everyone. I'm Linda Laurel. Welcome to Red, White, and Blue. After millions of dollars in attack ads and months of campaigning, the long 2014 primary election season finally came to a close on Tuesday. GOP voters decided what some called loud and vicious runoff races for Lieutenant Governor and Attorney General. The Democrats' ballot was a bit more quiet, with a little noise circulating about the choice for U.S. Senate and Texas Agriculture Commissioner. So, will a Tea Party leader emerge as the Lone Star State's new lieutenant governor? Will a Ted Cruz endorsed candidate replace Wendy Davis in the state Senate? And did nasty campaigning help or hurt the candidates? Tonight, we break down who won their party's nomination, what will November look like, and just how vicious will campaigning be this fall. Tonight, to help guide us through this discussion, we are pleased to welcome Jay Iyer, Assistant Professor of Law and Policy at the Barbara Jordan Mickey Leland School of Public Affairs at Texas Southern University, Noah M. Horwitz, editor of the Tex Patriot blog, and Dr. Brandon Rottinghouse, Associate Professor of Political Science at the University of Houston. And as always, leading our discussion, our hosts, David Jones and Gary Polland.
Well, David, Linda has given us a long list of things to talk about, so I'm going to tell the control room we're going to run a little over. We're going to do an hour today, as opposed to 30 minutes. But we do have a new guest, David.
We have Blogger first. In the interest of full disclosure, I like his dad. You know, his dad's a good guy. And I understand that everything he knows about politics he learned from you.
Well, I think that's the joke, but it's certainly been a symbiotic relationship.
So what was a big shocker, if there was any, in the runoff results for you?
Well, I don't think that there were really a lot of shocks as far as if you would define that as being surprised by something. I think most people were pretty, comfortable with the idea that Dan Patrick was going to win, Sid Miller was going to win for Agriculture Commissioner, Ken Paxton, Attorney General, Ryan Sitton for the Railroad Commission, David Alamil on the Democratic side. I don't think people are really surprised about it, but I think what was really terrifying, really, I think that's the best word for a lot of people, was that it finally validated what people had long feared, that the Republican establishment is no longer calling the shots within the party, and that what started as an upstart group a couple of years ago, the Tea Party is, you can debate about whether or not they've taken over the party or the party's taken over them, but it's fundamentally altered the state of the party.
And so, Mr. Iyer, we have a two-party state, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, Republican and the Tea Party.
We have the Tea Party, and we have the lobby party. And the Democrats get the social issues within the lobby party. Otherwise, nobody cares what they do or what they think. Is that fair?
No, it's not fair. I mean, we don't have a two-party state right now. We're a red state. We get as red as you can get right now. Right, the generic Republican has about somewhere between a neighborhood of an 8 to 10 point advantage in a general election. Here in Harris County, about a 50,000 vote advantage. It's a Republican state. So the challenge moving forward is for the Democratic Party is how do you define yourself in a way that makes you competitive again? Because right now they're not.
I don't know whether you missed this, Mr. Iyer, but the Chronicle revealed that about half the Democrats of this county are on the payroll of a delinquent tax collection firm. All right? So that's what I mean, that the Democrats have no party, they have no agenda, is that they're all on the payroll of private interests who need their help in the legislature. Now, how do you become a true party when that's where your leadership is?
No, I don't think that's the case, right? So I think what you're arguing is that the fundamental problems in the Democratic Party are the employment of some of the Democratic elected officials. The fundamental issue is that they have done a poor job of reaching out to voters, both in terms of the base of their party and reaching out across and getting independents and even Republican-leaning voters to move, whereas the Republican Party has benefited from that, right? So you've got some demographic problems, but if we sort of bring it back to the relevant questions, which is the elections in November. How do statewide Democrats compete? And it's very simple to me. The only possible chance for Democrats to be able to be competitive statewide is to make massive inroads among independents and Republican women. That has to be the entire strategy.
Brandon, do you think it's fair to say that the real ailment for Democrats is they have except for the top two, they have a pretty weak ticket?
It's definitely
Not ready
not an
for prime
all-star
time.
team, right? Yeah, but I mean, think about
It's
it this
like
way.
the Astros of political lineups.
Right.
I like that.
You've got something you can build
George
on,
Springer and no one else.
You know,
Exactly.
you look at these teams, you look at winning teams, and winning teams aren't always made up of all-stars. You've got have to have a deep bench. You've got to have utility players, and I think that if they can manage to get the right message to the right people, they can do well. That's going to be complicated because the fact is that a lot of independents break pretty conservatively. A lot of suburban women break pretty conservatively, not just in terms of their self-reported ideology, but also in terms of the issues, Obamacare, abortion, and death penalty. So this becomes a real problem for them to find the right issues to sort of appeal to. I think they've done that somewhat well. I think that they've tried to push the issue on education, which is a good wedge issue, but it's going to be complicated.
So what did you make of the Democrats' response? You please answer this as well, Mr. Pollan. That today, or rather the day following the election, rather, that they tried to lump Dan Patrick and Greg Abbott together, challenging Abbott to appear with Dan Patrick as if he's the Ted Nugent of the race.
Well, there are two parts of this. I mean, one is a sort of policy agenda where the Democrats have got to make, something to vote for. You can't simply just kick down the barn. They have to have something they can show. But at the same time, it's going to be pretty easy for them to show that the Republican ticket is as crooked as the Brazos, right? Their job is to say that there's a lot of problems here. We don't want these kinds of individuals in office, and we have to find a way past that.
Yeah, except that the first appearance for Abbott and Patrick will be next week at the Republican State Convention. It's not going to happen. And I actually think, David, based on information I have, that the campaigns coming forth from Abbott and from Patrick are going to be very public policy oriented to your chagrin and the shock of the Democrats. And the other thing the Democrats are dealing with this cycle is the Obama administration, the gift that keeps on giving for Republicans. It's not going away. The Obama administration is going to come up with its cap and trade plan. You think that's going to be popular in Texas? I'm telling you, the only way Republicans lose in November is if Dan Patrick or Greg Abbott pull a Clayton Williams.
Yeah.
No,
I think for the Democrats is that it's important to note that the weaknesses with the ticket aren't as simple as just recruiting bad candidates. Because I think a lot of the people that are running as Democrats are actually very good. You have, Sam Houston running for Attorney General, very good attorney who's very articulate and good on the campaign trail.
No
and
money.
Particularly, well, this is what I'm about to get to, and Mike Collier running for comptroller, who's also makes wonderful arguments. The problem is that they have no name recognition and they have no money. And that's, to be crass, that's the lifeblood of politics, is if you have cash in the bank. And so it's not necessarily a problem of not recruiting the right people, as much of a problem as just you don't have any confidence in it. And it's a problem that keeps building upon itself, because if you have no confidence, then you're not going to raise any money, and if you raise no money, you're not going to have any confidence.
And the other question you may that I'd ask is this: you have Democrats in the legislature, state senators who have $5, $6, $7 million campaign accounts, yet not one of them stepped forward to run statewide.
Right.
Well, a lot of them had to run for re-election.
Well, and it goes to what we were saying, is that there's been a presumption that this is a red state and it's difficult for a Democrat to win statewide. So some of your best and most well-funded candidates have clearly passed on this. But again, it goes back to what the point is, which is how do you win as a Democrat in a red state? And the blueprint has been, if you look at successful red state Democrats, is to move to sort of the right. Right? You have to run as a center-right candidate. Someone like a Michelle Nunn, who's been somewhat successful so far in Georgia, but we ultimately don't know. Wendy Davis and Leticia Van Der Pute are not those candidates. As good as they are as candidates, they aren't. So what do you do to make inroads? You have to go, and I think Brandon brought up the issue of education. I would take it a step further. She needs directly to appeal to Republican women. The issue of, for example, school testing is a huge issue among Republican in suburban counties. I would call for an absolute ban on all standardized testing. Something dramatic needs to be done for her to have a chance to even reach them. If she doesn't, this is going to be a 10-point race, and it's not going to be a race.
Yeah, so and we didn't have an answer. How does she escape Obama?
Oh, she's going to repudiate him on issues. I would say she needs to come out against cap and trade. She needs to come. She needs to articulate that she's in favor of say, fracking, right? Expanded fracking. She has to come out in favor of the Keystone Pipeline. She
make comments against Obamacare.
Right. Or at least make comments against the federal takeover of education.
She's already for the expansion of Medicaid.
Right.
Wendy Davis is for
right.
that.
Plenty of Republicans are for that too.
Correct. But if she, for example, said, I'm against No Child Left Behind, I'm against Race to the Top, I'm against the federal government telling Texans how do we run our education system, I think those are the kinds of things that are going to create some level of daylight for.
Yeah, but does she really believe that? That's the question.
Well, then it goes back to what we're talking about. Yeah.
Politicians never lie, right? So we
No, of
we
course
should be
not.
safe.
Dan Patrick said that his understanding of the Bible trumps the Constitution. Does he believe that? I mean, you tell me.
Let's hope not.
Well, you can ask Dan when he comes on. He's been on the show, David. You've had plenty of opportunities to discuss the Bible with
That's
Dan.
what he said.
and,
That's what he said.
Yeah, whatever.
Wendy Davis needs to propose Texas solutions. I mean, I think
Right.
Jay's exactly right. She needs to be able to focus on the issues that Texas care about. And the fact is that there are several issues confronting the state that aren't going to be brought up unless she brings them up. And these are serious, dire issues about water usage, about transportation, about infrastructure. She can use those issues to be able to craft her own discussion about what she wants to do and ignore all the other problems and or indicate that these are something that she's
but
less
it also
concerned
presupposes that Abbott and Patrick are going to give her a wide field and not talk about similar issues, which I anticipate they will.
Right.
So
because
which-
those
which
are
issues,
that are in the
Which,
transportation.
oh no, but which issues are they?
water.
Which issues are they going to abandon? Are they going to abandon pro-life issues? Are they going to abandon
No, they're
securing the
pro-life.
border?
No,
Or are they
they-
going to abandon marriage is one man and one woman? Are they going to abandon
One man,
that?
one woman, one
Are they going to
time.
ban that?
Yes.
Well,
no.
if you
abandon
ask
that?
Dan
No, that's
Patrick's
their
Twitter,
position.
it's sometimes one man and one man.
Yeah, they made a mistake.
Or are they going to embrace open carry? Continue to embrace open carry?
Well, Wendy's for open carry.
Right.
That's
I
a
mean,
definite issue.
that
Everybody's
was her
open
clumsy
carry.
attempt, clearly, to try
Yes,
to do it.
it made sense. Okay, let's talk about a local issue, and we'll kind of jump around.
Right.
That's come to fore this week. Mayor Parker got her I call it the anti-gay discrimination ordinance, but she calls it anti-discrimination ordinance, so some say it's discriminated against them. They can debate that as they did in council, but it's clear that the forces against it are going to get the signatures to put this on the ballot, and I'm told by my sources it'll be on the ballot in November. So that means it could have impact on Republicans and Democrats running for office. So I'd like y'all's take, including yours, David. What's the impact going to be?
Well, you know, I think I was at the council all day yesterday, and the city secretary, Anna Russell, who has been there for over 60 years, said that in her memory she hasn't seen so many people sign up ever. It was truly historic how many people wanted to voice their opinion on this issue. And of course, you know, the opponents are now organizing, and it's, you know, some people said, I guess we can put this issue to bed yesterday, and my response is no, it's just beginning.
Right.
And obviously it's probably going to be on the ballot for November. But I think that that's really something that is going to have to be accepted by a lot of people, and it goes back to something that Wendy Davis or other Democrats can do, which is maybe some of these issues should be talked up a little bit more. You know, I always talk about last year in the process of Wendy Davis's filibuster and everything, it was the abortion issue that drew thousands of people to the Capitol. She had a filibuster on education. Nobody came to the Capitol for that. Sometimes it's these social issues that really have to, you know, come to fruition for people to start debating it really heated and get people to think, you know, I'm going to get into politics now. There were a lot of people for, you know, any of these issues, gay rights, abortion, whatever, that...
Yeah, but that wasn't my question.
That was, well, but
That's
Jay,
right.
Jay has
Jay impact.
Jay has the
Right.
Bill White model for a state campaign.
Jay has his own model.
Well,
No,
no, that's what I hear
yeah,
is the
yes.
Bill White model, and Noah is suggesting another model, which has to do with social hot-button issues that motivate
The two are
Democrats.
mutually
Right,
exclusive.
right, and they're not. And I don't think there's as much difference as to what he and I are
Yeah.
saying. I think the point of the impact is that when you look at what it could have, is that this is an issue that doesn't cut necessarily upon a partisan basis as much as based on an age differential. So younger voters under the age of 40 tend to be for it, over 40 tend to be against it, in broad terms with some level of partisan differentiation. But it makes a huge difference in terms of ethnic and racial voting, because African Americans really historically have not voted, have been as favorable to gay rights issues as other Democratic core constituencies. So when you look at it, putting it on a November ballot, and if you look at some of the opposition, some of the ministerial alliances that were against it, the potential advantage for Republicans running statewide or running in this county is it gives you an opportunity to try to create a wedge between Democrats and their most loyal constituency. The challenge for Democrats, and when we were talking earlier, Noah brought this issue up, there's been leading advocates in the African American community, Senator Rodney Ellis, Reverend Bill Lawson, who have come out strongly in favor of this. The NAACP has come out strongly in favor of this. So how does that cut against it? But this is going to be a real issue. It's going to create some real potential tensions.
Well, and another question which you didn't ask was this. It may be that the African American vote will be against the resolution that the mayor passed. But that doesn't mean when they go to the polls they won't vote Democratic.
Right.
Which is the other thing.
Which is the other thing.
Which is an interesting thing. And, you know, so there's unintended consequences in my mind of what happens. You really don't know. It could,
so
a
Brandon,
wild card.
Brandon, are the Democrats too timid to identify the Republican Party as a hate party made up of extremists and tied in to the same people who are hating gays, who are going to be offering this
I don't think they've said
choice
that as
in
the reason they're against
yeah,
it.
well, believe me, it'll be the campaign theme will be that's
Good.
it.
I mean, I don't think that they're as worried about that as they are about having to take a position affirmatively on that issue, because the problem is that the Republicans can have a very simple out to be able to claim that every Democrat can be painted with the same brush, right? They can say the following: abortion, Obama, gays. The game over, because at that point,
your guns.
yeah, and guns, yeah. We'll probably come up with a good acronym. But the problem is for Democrats that they don't want to be associated with these issues that they don't have any control over, and they don't have any control over this issue. So they're all going to be asked how they feel about this ordinance, and the problem is that they're going to have to either evade it, which is a problem, or they're going to have to embrace it, which is a different problem. So in Texas, it's a lose-lose for these Democrats statewide.
And in fact, in line with what you two gentlemen talked about how the Democrats could be successful in terms of issues and showing that they're really moderates and not leftists or conservatives, but moderates that are pro-gun and the like, that would go against that whole message and put them in a difficult situation. Look, if the Democrats get stomped in Harris County, there's no hope in the state. It's over. And
The Republicans
having won the county, you know,
The
three
Republicans
out
of
of the last
Michigan
four
hearing.
elections.
Well, it's really misleading to say the Democrats won in 2010. Bill White, just by process of being the mayor for 6 years in Houston, carried Harris County.
Well, that counts.
But nobody else on the Democratic side, not a single other Democrat won. In fact, all the other Democrats got blown out of the water. Huge losses for all of them.
Three
Well, that's
judges
because they didn't
survived.
vote down ballot.
3 judges survived.
There you go.
Yeah.
Not countywide.
Well, you know, here's what I want to know. I just read where the Michigan Republicans have passed an increase in a minimum wage. What about the inequality argument, income inequality argument, which other Democrats are employing in other states and cities, being used here in Texas, whether it be pay equity, universal pre-K, minimum wage increase, affordable tuition for a change, rather than giving Toyota $40 million to go to Plano.
I think what you have to do is you have to sort of bifurcate the issues as sort of local versus state. And I think in local areas, because we are a red state and we have some very blue municipalities, metropolitan communities all throughout the state, right? In those areas, these issues work really well, but statewide they don't. And at least they haven't, right? So if you look at the model of how do we need to, or how can we govern, or how can we win is probably a better way of putting it, you have to look at a model by which you reach more to the center. And I don't know that model works under the scenario of what you're painting.
What Hispanic voter in the Rio Grande Valley is going to be eager to go to the polls as they listen to this going to the center campaign? I mean, what?
Well,
really?
after they listen, actually think about this. How are they getting you to go to the polls? I hear statewide Democrats embracing the gay rights agenda. And when they say, well, what about us? What happened to our agenda? All they're talking about are these people who are the most prosperous demographic group in the country, I guess, after Asians and elderly white males. So, I mean, come on.
I mean, I think, again, I understand what you're saying, but if you make the argument, if you think the answer for Democrats is to win by growing the base, I would tell you that hasn't won anywhere.
You've never had Dan Patrick yet on a ticket as you have
I don't
now.
think that's a winning strategy.
Which?
Because the idea of saying that, oh, this Republican is more extreme than the other Republican, therefore the Democrats will win. I think that's about as close to a logical fallacy as you can get in politics. I remember in 2010, people talking about, oh, Kay Bailey Hutchinson's running against Rick Perry. If Rick Perry wins the primary, we can beat him. And of course, that didn't happen. Not even close. I remember David Dewhurst running against Ted Cruz, and people saying on the Democratic side, if Ted Cruz wins the primary, we can beat him. And that was a Democratic year when Obama got reelected, and Democratic judges and ballots in Houston got elected. And statewide, Ted Cruz did not come even close to being defeated.
Let me disagree with you on that point slightly, in that what Dan Patrick does do, and Brandon, please chime in on this, what Dan Patrick does do is make it possible for Leticia Vanderpute to more aggressively move to the center because Dan's given her so much real estate, in theory, right? So the idea is that when you have an extreme candidate even in a red state, that you have a lot more real estate for you to move. But here's the catch: you have to move. If you stay on, if this entire race so far has been predicated on key traditional Democratic issues, we don't win. Democrats don't win because the playing field is suburban women
Well, and here's the other
Republican
problem.
women.
Here's the other problem they have. Most voters haven't paid attention to any
Correct.
of this
That's the
stuff.
other-
So when they
that's
start paying attention, they're going to see the new Dan Patrick, the Dan Patrick who cares about conservative public policy. And
It's too late.
Moderated.
That horse
But-
is out of the barn.
no.
Well, if they,
Brandon.
as long as they don't use Google and find
Right.
some of
Well-
the back issues. But I think
But
that
how
he
many
can
of them do?
rebrand himself as a more kind of compassionate-looking individual. It may not stick, but I think he can try. And as Jay says, I think that the problem for the Democrats is that there's no solvable there's no solvable solution for immigration. There's no way to win this battle. The only thing they can do, I think, is to really challenge the Republicans, and that's only going to get you so far. In terms of other issues like pay equity and gender equity, I think that the Democrats' problem is that there's a real split in terms of moderates and independent women who aren't necessarily sure which way to go, and that creates a problem for the Democrats trying to find some kind of a middle ground.
Suburban
And
women don't know what to make of pay equity.
I think that they're split. I mean,
I don't think it's a problem.
they lean conservatively, and that's something that's
Everybody
not,
wants to get paid, Brandon.
Well, sure, they want to get paid, but they don't know that that's the way to get it done.
Do you
to
think
have
they
it
can accept
mandated.
being cheated?
I don't think they can accept that.
But
I
you
don't think
haven't
that they-
established that anybody's getting cheated.
Yeah,
Okay, that's a
I mean,
different
I
issue,
think they
David.
want it, but they don't want it that way. At least that's my impression. But I think that certainly they're split on it, and that's creates an issue for the Dems.
Brandon, I also want to ask you, one of the things that Linda put out there was on negative campaigning, and it's fair to say that we had the most negative lieutenant governor primary race in the history of Texas.
Right.
Is there anything we can tell, and you're the professor, so you study this, does negative campaigning work?
Negative campaigning works very well if you care about your base. So that what it does essentially is to expand the base and make them energetic, right? Like trying to, tease a rabid dog. What it works in general is if you can begin to paint a picture of a candidate in a way that you didn't realize before. So if the first thing people hear about Dan Patrick is something negative, that's going to stick. If the first thing they hear about Ken Paxton is negative, that's going to stick. The same though is true on the other side. The first thing they hear about Wendy Davis is going to be something about how she lies about her record, or about Leticia Van de Putte. And so there is an issue, I think, that negative campaigning or the sort of contrast campaigning can work, but it has to be done very carefully.
So the only Democrat who can win is Sam Houston because he's running against a guy who may get indicted. Is that our prediction
But
for
that
the fall?
won't be an issue in the fall either.
I mean, no, that's what the Chronicle said.
Well, he has the
Well,
best chance
that's
of winning
reliable.
in the same way that, if you have 3 dogs running for a bus, one of them might have the best chance of reaching the bus.
The fastest dog.
I think with the Ken Paxton issue, it's interesting because going back to this idea of negative campaigning, because, obviously correlation doesn't imply causation necessarily, but if you look at the people that had some of the dirtiest ads, I guess with the exception of the lieutenant governor's race and the other down ballot seats, the ones with the dirtier ads won. Ken Paxton in particular had a vicious ad against Dan Branch that accused him of supporting expansion of late-term abortions. I think PolitiFact rated that one patently false. But people still see it, and obviously not enough people did their research, and they think, if they're pro-life, they're not going to vote for this Branch
But
guy.
as Gary is always telling us, that's 3% of the electorate that is paying attention to these messages. The moderate Republicans have left their party. So do we really think that's not possible? That they've already seen that this extremist end of the Republican Party is one that they want to get rid of?
No, it's not. It's not that they've left their party. It's that they're just not voting in their primaries.
Don't care.
Just like when we had 1.5% turnout in the Democratic, we didn't suddenly lose a bunch of Democrats. They just chose not to vote because these processes are so dominated by really tiny slivers of the base.
Do you think part of the problem is that we had such a long period between the
Yes,
first race
absolutely.
and the runoff?
Yes.
Absolutely.
I think it was an
I think
issue.
that contributed a lot, and I think that was done by design.
And voter fatigue as well. I think the voters are voting all the time, it seems, and there's always something.
So
that
we need
they
to
have
limit the
do.
time to vote. We need to have a shorter period in between.
Yeah, I mean, I think that keeps people's interest and keeps their energy.
All right,
and that's
early
what we need,
predictions for November. Any upsets for the Democrats statewide?
No, I think we talked about this earlier. I think that Sam Houston will be the highest vote getter for Democrats. No one else will get close. Right now, at least.
Mr. Horwitz.
I'll agree with that. When it comes to the more local races, I think Harris County is going to be a bitterly fought battleground all the way to the end. I think it's in the cards for the Republicans or the Democrats to carry the county, and either way, I'd say the top
Brandon
five
gets a
bottom
few
are
seconds.
52%.
Final word, 10 seconds.
I think victory now, backlash next time.
Interesting. Well, Linda,
Great conversation.
can we have another 30 minutes, please?
Yeah, you did it. You did it, Gary. All right. Thank you very much. Well, remember, you can catch Red, White, and Blue every Friday at 7:30 p.m. right here on TV8 and again Saturdays at 6:30 p.m. We also invite you to visit us online and send us your comments. We want to hear what you are saying about the issues that affect Houston. You can submit your comments at houstonpublicmedia.org or on Facebook. And while you're there, don't forget to like us. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you again next week. Good night.